Gatton Cemetery. We're walking towards the Murphy Children's Memorial. They were killed in
1898.
Yep.
On Boxing Day.
And the murder has never been solved.
Well, two of the girls and one of the boys actually went to a dance in Gatton. They lived just outside of Gatton. And the murder happened on the way back home.
This is the memorial for Michael, aged 29 years, Nora, aged 27, and Ellen, aged 18. Dearly beloved children of Daniel and Mary Murphy, who were victims of horrible tragedy perpetrated near Gatton, December the 26th, 1898. This is a very elaborate memorial. On Boxing Day, December 26, 1898, two of the Murphy sisters, Ellen, 18, Nora, 27, and their brother Michael, 29, headed off to a dance in Gatton. They left around 8 p.m. riding in a sulky from their family's farm just a few miles from town.
Well, when the girls left, their mother, Mary, recalled later that they had a laugh on her face. Each had a laugh on her face. Dances usually swirled on into the early hours of the following day, but there was no sign of them by 7:30 in the morning. The next morning, Mary started to worry.
She sent her son-in-law, William McNeil, who was married to her eldest daughter, Polly, to find them. McNeil set off on a horseback, watching the roads for the sulky's track, which were distinctive because the one wheel wobbled. The tracks led him into neighbor's pasture and to a scene of horror. Ellen, Nora, Michael, and the horse were all lying on the ground. He thought they were sleeping. Then he saw ants crawling on Nora's cheek.
Nora was stretched out on a rug under a tree. She had been strangled and her skull smashed. The corpses of Ellen and Michael were a few yards away, lying close together, back to back. Their skulls were also smashed. Ellen and Nora had semen on their clothes and legs and had been raped. The attackers even shot the horse.
Michael also had what looked like a bullet hole in his head, but the examiner who conducted the autopsy would not find a slug. Gatton had a population of about 450 in 1898, and it would have seemed likely that whoever committed this crime would quickly be caught. A lay magistrate assured the victim's distraught mother that it would be solved by nightfall of the day the bodies were discovered. But the investigation was bungled from the start. It took 2 days for reports of the horror to reach the police department in Brisbane, leaving the initial investigation in the hands of Gatton's small, inexperienced force. The murder scene was not immediately closed off, and they always do. Crowds flocked to it to gawk. They contaminated the scene, making it impossible for trackers to find clues, such as the killer's footprints in the ground around the bodies.
Autopsies were poorly conducted. There were so many inconsistencies in the reports that the bodies later had to be exhumed for another look. The second time, the examiner found the bullet in Michael's head that the first autopsy had missed.
Within a couple of days, a local newspaper, the Toowoomba Chronicle, reported that the locals were referring it to the case as Gatton mystery, as if they had already given up hope that it would ever be solved. Suspicions immediately fell upon the family, including McNeil, who had a rocky relationship with his in-laws. He had an alibi, and he was soon ruled out.
A woman in a nearby farmhouse said she heard screams of "Father" around the time of the murders, sparking theories that the Murphys' patriarch had killed his children to cover up incest. Others suggested that the town priest was to blame, or that one or more of the victims' 7 siblings were involved. Another possibility was that of Polly's former suitors, who driven to rage after rejecting him.
Gossip also swirled around Michael and his relationship with a woman in the town, wrote Stephanie Bennett in the Gatton murders. There were rumors that he had fathered more than one out-of-wedlock child, and a girl had died in childbirth. Relatives of the dead girl might have had motive to kill him. Nora also might have been the target of vengeance.
Detectives found or favored the theory that the murder is most likely the work of one or more of the seedy transients who moved through the area. They focused on 2 shady characters with substantial criminal records who had shown up in Gatton not long before the killing.
One of these transients were Richard Burgess, 39, a career criminal who had been released from prison a couple of weeks earlier. "I was born to be hanged," he once boasted, but his alibi checked out. Another habitual troublemaker, Thomas Day, 20, had recently started working for a local butcher and slept in a shack near the murder scene. Day, who went by several aliases, had gone down in history as most likely suspect in this case, as well as another unsolved Australian murder. But police could not gather evidence enough to pin the crimes on him.
After several months and more than 3,000 interviews, no charges were ever filed. We have failed because from the very onset we had no chance of success in how Urquhart explained the case during the inquiry a year later. But Australians have not given up. Retired detectives, historians, grandmothers, and hobby sleuths have probed the case. Nearly 120 years later, they continue to propose theories about the who, how, and why of the Gatton mystery.
I guess that's the story so far.
Well, it sounded like they really would have had a good chance if Brisbane was able to be involved earlier, and all the people that actually gawked around the crime scene didn't destroy all the evidence that they could have picked up. So they were left actually to try to come up with some ideas and theories on how it possibly could have happened. But as we noted, it never eventuated in arresting anybody for the murders.
Well, Michael, Nora, and Ellen, I hope you can rest in peace, even though the killer hasn't been found. Only you know who did it, and I'm sure the killer will pay for his crime, even in his death. I hope you found this interesting. We find it interesting.
Well, I think we enjoy going into the history and seeing how a lot of these areas actually grew and developed over the years.
Yeah, it's a shame when something like this happens and the killer goes free. But I'm sure that...
Well, there's a lot of evidence that if it was in modern times, they would have had the person.
But then a lot of people have been accused of committing crimes like this, and they actually haven't committed crimes. And
Yeah.
So, yeah. In those days, you would think that, you know, they just nominate someone.
Well, I guess their number one suspect was that 20-year-old Day, who was actually sleeping close by.
Working as a butcher.
He was a known criminal,
Yeah.
and probably didn't have an alibi, but they didn't have the evidence actually to convict him.
Yeah.
And mainly that's because they really didn't get the authorities that knew what they were doing on the scene quick enough, and the townspeople destroyed all the possible evidence they could have had.
Yeah, that's true.
So it'll probably never be solved fully, but I guess everybody has their theories, and they'll just have to live with that.
Okay, well, I guess that's it.
I hope
Thank
you
you.
enjoyed that.